Yeah. Yeah, let me pull
Okay.
up the path.
Okay, so thanks for that input on that winter shelter. We'll do spot 8, server providers. Guess we can start with Courtney and Anna.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. Happy New Year. Anna's gonna go through our presentation.
Thank you, everyone. Yes, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Anna. I am the program manager for PATH Outreach Team, as well as the new housing navigation team that PATH has acquired. We are continuing assisting individuals, single adult individuals over the age of 25 with this, some of these services listed on the screen.
Hi, my name is Daisy. I'm calling in with coal imports here in the city of Carson as well. I was calling in because we have a good quantity of
Amanda, can you mute?
I'm so
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Sorry.
Thank you.
We've all been there. All right, we can move on to the next slide. Okay, so this is our overall outreach schedule. At the moment, it has been changing frequently, but for the most part, we try to stay within the cities within those days. We've just had a lot of housing searches, a lot of emergencies happen. So we try our best to stick to the schedule, but if you do need to contact us, you can feel free to reach out to myself or to Courtney to see where our team members are at, and we will guide you, or we will guide them to your participants or your referrals as well. Next slide. So today we're going to start off with success stories. Rasa, can you put one more? There you go. We're going to start with the positive notes today. I want to share a story of Tad. Tad has been working with us since May of 2022, so almost a full year. And he was located or encountered by the PATH Outreach Team in one of the biggest encampments in the South Bay, which is the Lomito McCoy encampment. He was sleeping on a tent, and he was pretty much not receiving any services at the time being. Once PATH came across him, he was enlisted into the tiny home village in Harbor, where he was enrolled in June of 2022. Once he was placed there, he continued receiving case management by PATH and also by the staff at Tiny Home Village. As of November 2022, he was approved for 1-bedroom apartment, which he is extremely thankful and can say that he can finally get started with his life or continue on with his life. So we're pretty excited to see Tad move on and obtain a unit independently. Next slide. For this success story, this is Louis. He was encountered at Veteran Park in June 2022. Oh, sorry, I meant to say June. Yeah. We're still in 2022. I'm still learning the years. I'm sorry. He was placed on the wait list for the Redondo Palace shelter. While waiting, he was also matched to the West Haven apartments in October. He was able to move into the Palace shelter in Redondo, and then as he moved in, soon after, he was given a move-in date for the West Athens apartment, which was in December of 13. His unit has been determined ready and set, and he is happy. He says that the expectations were exceeded, and he is extremely grateful and thankful for all the resources and all the connections and all the assistance that the case manager have provided him. Next slide. So now we're going to get into our community connections. We have added new connections. We've continued the joint outreaches at Lomito McCoy encampment. We're also doing joint outreaches with Gardena. We're doing joint outreaches in Lawndale. We're doing joint outreaches in Carson with the city staff. And we're doing joint outreaches in Torrance with their city staff, which is Valerie, which is one person. But it's a great help to have other individuals collaborate with. For the Redondo Homeless Corps, it is attended every last Wednesday of each month. We're continuing communication with the police departments whenever needed. And we're continuing working with the local shelters. For the Redondo Beach meal givings, we do attend when it is needed or when we're trying to locate an individual or a participant, but we're not attending the meals regularly. Next slide. Some of the more extensive community connections, again, as I mentioned earlier, we'll continue the Gardena joint outreaches, and this is done with Harbor Interfaith, LASA, Mental Health America, and we're just trying to provide services to individuals in different locations, in 2 different encampments as well. For the joint outreach with city staff, this is with city staff from Carson and city staff from Torrance. And this is to better service individuals, to help each other locate areas of needs and individuals of needs as well. In Lawndale, we're continuing working with city officials. However, we have established somewhat of a collaboration with LASA outreach staff. We do communicate with Lawndale city staff regularly, pretty much weekly. They refer someone over to us, but we do not do outreach with them. And then also we're continuing communication and contact with Department of Health Services Mobile Health Clinic. They are in different locations throughout Spot 8. When they are out, we try to adjust our schedule so that we attend that location that they are, so we can provide services or transport our participants to those locations so that they can obtain primary care and some mental health services if needed. The Department of Health Services Mobile Clinic is able to do referrals to extensive healthcare needs or provide connections to any like therapist, psychiatric, or assessment needs as well. Aside from these community engagements or connections, we've also received direct referrals from Johnny Hahn's office with Ivan. So we've been working with some of their direct referrals. That includes 2 families and then 2 different other individuals as well, who we've been helping out. And thankfully and gratefully, we've been able to house 2 of those referrals. Next slide. So LA Hub, we're continuing to receive LA Hub referrals, and we highly encourage everyone to continue using it if you do see individuals out on the streets. Next slide. So for the months of November and December, we have received 22 referrals. In Carson, we received 14. In Torrance, we received 4. In Lomita, we received 2. In Harbor City, we received 1. And in Lawndale, we received 1. Next slide. This is a little bit of information about our current caseload. We have a total of 36 individuals between just 2 outreach staff. We currently have 14 seniors in SD2 and 6 seniors in SD4. Outreach interactions, meaning these are individuals that are not on our caseload, individuals that have been interacted on the streets. This has been a number of 46. Out of those 46, 5 of them have led to enrollment. And then for pending housing, we have 3 individuals who are currently waiting for a move-in date into a public rental unit, either because they're waiting for an RFTA packet from the Housing Authority to be approved, or the unit is just not yet ready. And then we have 2 individuals still waiting for a project-based housing placement in West Haven. Next slide. These are some of our outcomes obtained so far. For mental health in SD4, we obtained 1 and have 1 referral so far. In SD2, unfortunately, we have not obtained any mental health, but we have made 15 referrals. In SD4, for primary care, we have obtained 3 and made 3 referrals. For SD2, we have obtained 8 primary care services and referred 16. For substance dependency in SD4, unfortunately, we have not been able to obtain or make any referrals. For substance dependency in SD2, we have obtained 2 and 8 so far have been referred. SD4 increased income has not been obtained, but 4 have been referred over to. And then in SD2, 2 have been obtained, while 11 have been referred. For permanent housing in SD4, only 2 have been obtained, unfortunately, but 28 referrals have been made. And then in SD2, 9 have been obtained and 33 have been referred.
And just to be clear, these are just the path outcomes. not including of all the efforts going on in South Bay for all those who are new to our task force.
Correct. These are a little bit more of our current efforts. We have continued our referrals for LAHSA interim housing, bridge housing, DHS, DMH interim housing, safe parking, tiny homes. So for LAHSA interim housing, we have made 5 referrals to FAR, 11 to bridge homes, 11 to DHS or DMH interim housing, 24 to safe parking, and 14 to tiny homes. This is in either Torrance, Redondo, or Wilmington. And then for housing vouchers, we did receive 2 new issuance in December, so that came as a surprise. But we haven't received, or we haven't submitted any new voucher requests or have received any new matches. And then for exit strategies, they still remain the same. We either help with direct placement, place in shared housing, an SRO living facility, recuperative care, or some type of interim housing with case management. Next slide. And then some of our challenges as well remain the same. We continue to be with a team of 2. However, we are in the process of onboarding 2 possible new team members, so we're pretty excited for that. The shelters have been at their max capacity and or COVID lockdowns. There's lack of interim housing availability, low affordable housing availability, especially for seniors on fixed income or low income. Street to subsidy doesn't have any current availabilities, and then emergency housing vouchers have been paused indefinitely. Next slide. And then these are some of our current outreach pictures for the past 2 months. Next slide. And then this is our current contact information. Again, you can either contact Courtney or myself if you want to make a direct referral or you have any comment, questions, or concerns.
And we'll send this in the email after the meeting.
Sounds good.
Any quick questions? No? Sherry, did you have something?
Of course I do.
Go ahead.
All right. First and foremost, Happy New Year, everybody. Looking forward to a lot of great work happening in 2023. Let's start with our interim housing sites. So San Pedro interim housing, the one that we were talking about is DHS funded. We currently have 15 vacancies over here. So again, I'll be working offline with Ivan after we get done with this call and DHS to do direct referrals to this site, because there's no reason we should have empty beds that are being held up by a referral process. We had 8 permanent housing placements within the last month. San Pedro, ABH, we're pretty full over there. So out of the 100 beds that we have, we currently only have 6 vacancies, and I think we have 4 move-ins tomorrow alone. So far for this year, we've had 11 permanent housing placements out of that site, and there are some other ones that are pending. Redondo Beach Pallet Shelter, there are currently no vacancies, and we've had 9 permanent housing placements. And Torrance Pallet Shelter, same situation, no vacancies, waiting list. We have, however, had 3 permanent housing placements and 1 person that was moved to a medical higher level of care. For the individual system, so far this year, we've had a total of 8 people that have been moved into permanent housing through our time limited subsidy program. We've had another 19 chronically homeless individuals through outreach and housing navigation that have been placed into permanent housing. And then we also too have 3 independent city grants where we provide housing navigation and outreach, mostly in the Beach Cities area, but we've also been able to place 38 more individuals into permanent housing through those particular programs. For our transitional age youth program, we've had so far 12 households assessed, and we've got 9 individuals that have moved into permanent housing for this year. Our family system, we've had 240 households that have been assessed so far this year. We've had 51 that have moved into permanent housing, and then another 28 that were able to retain their housing through prevention services, so they did not move into homelessness. seems like we're all talking about West Haven today, permanent supportive housing. So I just want to kind of lift up and leave us on a high note with success stories so far for this year. Both of these are residents that were at our Torrance Pallet Shelter. First one is Derek. Derek was 35 or is 35 years old. He's been homeless since 2007. And after 4 months at the 3290 Tiny Homes, he has moved into his very first apartment of his own over at West Haven. Derek reported that, he loves his new apartment, loves eating and cooking. Not that he was ever shy about that while he was a resident at Torrance. But one of his goals moving forward is that he's going to enroll next semester at Southwest College, which happens to be right across the street from his new housing site. Our second client, Cindy. Cindy is 62 years old. She had been homeless since 2017 after having a stroke. She first lost her employment, she lost her apartment, and eventually was found sleeping in her car at Columbia Park. The stroke left her permanently disabled, but it did not diminish her spirit. One thing I love about Cindy is she was always, able to help other people and other residents and support them, even if it was just taking them to DMV in her car. She was always that kind of person. But I'm happy to report that on December the 16th, her homelessness ended as well. The caveat, the blessing to this is that she's kind of had an estranged relationship from her 37-year-old daughter. She was quite honestly ashamed of being in that situation and didn't want to see her. And now she has a home where that daughter can now come visit her. And that is it for my report.
Thanks, Sherry. Great report.
Thank you.
So we're going to move on to Eric Vargas from LASA, who's going to talk about the 2023 homeless count.
And let me just share the screen. And then I just want to add thanks, Sherry, the update on West Haven. I think the COG through its programs, we had about 15 people go into the West Haven permanent supportive housing site. So it just really goes to show the importance of having these permanent supporting housing developments come up. Without them, it's just so hard to move people out of our shelters. And so, the West Haven site was such a godsend.
Thanks, Rod.
Yeah, thank you all. Thank you all for your time. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Eric Vargas. I'm the Community Relations Coordinator for SPA 8 on behalf of LASA. And I have some quick 2023 homeless count announcements for SPA 8 that I bring to you to this meeting. So Ronson, we can move ahead. And so as we all know, the homeless count for SPA 8 will be happening Wednesday, January 25th at 8 p.m. These are the other dates for all the spas across LA County, but SPA 8 will be happening Wednesday, January 25th, starting at 8 across all of our deployment sites. And the major announcement I have is that the volunteer trainings and deployment site coordinator trainings are out. So we are trying to have as many volunteers as possible trained before the date in order to ease and make the process a lot faster when it comes time to check in. So volunteer trainings will be happening in 2 time frames from 12 to 1:30 and 5 to 6:30. There's also 2 weekend volunteer trainings available. One of them is Saturday, January 14th, and the last one will be Saturday, January 21st, both from 12 to 1:30. The deployment site lead trainings, there will be 2 in-person trainings. The first one is Tuesday, January 10th in Spot 3, and the second one is Thursday, January 12th in Spot 8. Thank you to Soma and her team over at Torrance for hosting the Spot 8 in-person training for deployment site leads. And in the next slide, I have the address for that. And, Ronson also has access to this PowerPoint he can share with you all. But the in-person deployment site coordinator training Thursday, January 12th, that will be happening in Torrance, will be at the Toyota Meeting Hall at 3330 Civic Center, Torrance. So anyone here who's a deployment site lead, please feel free to attend this training. You all will be trained in all of the process for the homeless count night and how to check in volunteers. Also the app. I know the app is out, so if you all have any questions regarding the app, that would be a good place to bring your questions to. And the next slide. As of last week, for SPA 8, we had 146 volunteers. I should have an updated number because I've had a lot of folks reach out to me during this week. And our homeless task force meeting is today from 4 to 5. So I can send that updated number to Ronson, but as of last week, we were at 146. So still encouraging as many folks as possible to sign up for this year's homeless count, because we want to have as many volunteers as possible. And those are all of my announcements on my behalf. I don't know if there's any questions or concerns.
Hi, Eric. It's Lori Jacobs. What number is the goal? You're at 146. What's the goal number?
The goal, I think we want to be between at least 200 to 250 for SPA 8. I think that that's something we're aiming for within LASA. But you know, the more we have, the easier it is on everybody. In terms of covering the tracks. There are some cities that have a lot more tracks than others.
Right. So we're about 3 weeks out. I checked on the site, and like if for San Pedro, you're shooting for 80 and you only have 27 as of today. And a couple of those people are the ones managing the site. So I do have some concerns. So I'm putting it out there to everybody. We all need to chip in and try and recruit and remind people, you want to be involved. You want to be part of the solution. This is one of the easiest things you can do. And, you know, promote it, why it's so important that our resources are based on these numbers.
Yeah, and Lori, I think it's important too that people understand it's when you said easy with the new app, it is really easy to go out and do the counts now. It's, you know, it's not tedious like it used to be. It's pretty, you know, it's team wise, and it's very simple with the app. So just people need to know that.
And also, if somebody is a little technology challenged, okay, I'm told that they can use a paper one still with a clipboard.
Yeah.
So don't let technology be a stopping point, but they'd really rather use the app. But you might have some people who are hesitant because of it.
Yeah. That's good. Let's get people involved. Okay, thanks, Eric. We appreciate you bringing the LASA information to us. Let's go to the presentation on evictions and tenants' rights by Alana Eden, Director of Media Outreach and Education.
Hello, I'm here.
It's all yours.
Oh, great. Okay, you already have that up. Great. So let me, so thank you for having me. Again, my name is Ilana, and I am the Outreach Director at the Housing Rights Center. I was asked to talk today about the status of the remaining COVID-19 protections, as well as a little bit on what we're actually seeing in terms of evictions. If it's okay, I'll just start by introducing us at HRC, and yes, that's the next slide. Thank you. So we are a nonprofit, and our focus is fair housing. And fair housing, for those who may not be familiar, is really specifically civil rights in housing and combating discrimination in housing. And that really is a result of the civil rights movement. That's how we started in 1968. We are contracted with the County of Los Angeles and also with a number of cities within the county independently, including a number of cities in the South Bay. We provide our free fair housing services and landlord tenant services in those areas. Next, thank you. So I'll have our information up again at the end, but these are some of our core services. Housing counseling, which is free for both tenants and landlords to just ask questions and get legal information, some of which I'm going to be sharing with you today. So we have our phone line, which is answered live, although it's pretty common to get a voicemail just because of the volume of calls that we get. We have our email. We've been doing virtual and phone appointments since the beginning of the pandemic, since we had to shut down some of our in-person activities around the county. But we're bringing some of those back, and in particular, we have a walk-in clinic in Carson the first Wednesday of the month. So today was our one for January. We also screen for discrimination complaints. And so when people come to us with the question, and it turns out that's actually a discrimination issue based on any number of things, we are able to assist in many of those cases. We're a member of Stay Housed LA, which I'll talk about a little bit later, helping with eviction issues. And I myself work on outreach and education here at HRC, and that includes, workshops for the public, trainings for other organizations, all kinds of different things, as well as Project Place, which is our rental listing for people seeking affordable housing. Thank you. So the COVID protections are a little bit dense. I'm not sure how many people are already familiar with any of them. But a key part of them is the ability for tenants to delay a rental payment if they've been impacted financially by the pandemic. And in the city of Los Angeles, and then in the rest of the county, those are sort of the two buckets of tenant protections related to COVID. They're very similar, but they have some key differences. So for the city of LA, tenants are going to be able to delay rent with the protection against eviction until the end of January. They do have to provide a notice to the landlord that they're going to do that. It's not automatic. And that has been a barrier for some people, the fact that they have to know about and then take this proactive action. But what this means is that as of February, tenants are going to be, required to pay their full rent. Otherwise, they will be able to be evicted. And then the delayed rent will come due later on. So for the city of LA, it's due in these two chunks on the screen. And then for the county of LA, I'm sorry, I'm going a little bit fast because I know there's a lot to cover, but anything that I don't shout out explicitly is on the slides, and you'll be able to reference those later as well. So I'll try to give sort of a simplified version of the slides. For the rest of the county, which, as I mentioned, is the other bucket, there was already a period when there was a gap in protections and tenants were able to be evicted and still could be evicted if they didn't pay rent April, May, or June of this year, even if they had a COVID hardship. Starting in July, though, there is again this protection, and just like in the city, it lasts until the end of this month. However, for everywhere else in LA County, both cities and unincorporated areas, tenants, it's not enough that they had a financial hardship from COVID. They also have to be under a certain income. And that is what that chart on the screen shows. Just like elsewhere, the tenant does have to provide a notice to the landlord, letting them know that they're going to invoke this protection. I should mention that we keep those notices on our website and try to make them really easy to find so that people can do that easily. In LA County, tenants are going to have to pay back their delayed rent in a year from January 31st, 2024, so the end of January next year. Go ahead. So you might be starting to get the sense that pretty soon, as of February, tenants in this entire LA County area are going to have to pay their full rent, and also are going to have to potentially be making payments on past debt that they have. So this is really long-term impacts that tenant households are going to be facing and having to pay, more even than they would have had to before. But there are some other protections too that don't have to do with just paying rent. Tenants, and this is again very similar in the city of LA and every other city and unincorporated part of LA County, with some key differences, mostly around when things start to change. The city of LA has longer term protections in particular. But at least until the end of this month, tenants have a defense if they are facing eviction for having people staying with them who are not on the lease, or pets as well, as long as that is because of the COVID emergency that situation came about. Within the city of LA, that'll last another year as well. There's also a broad category of evictions. It's called no fault evictions, which means it's not the tenant's fault. They didn't do anything wrong, but for some reason, the landlord wants that property back. There has been a pretty broad protection against those in, the whole county. They're going to be able to resume again at the end of this month. And in fact, in most of Los Angeles County, in many cases, they're already allowed, especially if the owner wants to move into the property. This being said, right, this is only talking about changes to these broad emergency protections. There are properties in the South Bay and throughout the county that have other protections from other sources that are not just tied to the emergency. So this doesn't necessarily mean that all protections are going away, although for some properties that will be true because some properties just don't have anything else. But in many areas in the city of LA, unincorporated LA County, the city of Inglewood, and then some sort of scattered properties throughout California, there might be some other protections that are more limited, but still would provide something as a protection. I also wanted to mention, in addition to evictions, the issue of rent increases. Rent controlled or rent stabilized properties in the city of LA and unincorporated LA County have both had basically a ban on rent increases, or what they call a freeze or rent freeze, since the beginning of the pandemic. And those are also going to be ending. So the city of LA, again, lasts longer until the end of January 2024. That is when those properties will be able to have their rent increased again. For unincorporated LA County, it will be the end of this January that they'll be able to have rent increases. And again, for those properties in the city of Inglewood, in LA, in unincorporated county, and in some cases throughout California, they may still have limits on rent increases, 3%, 10%, whatever it is according to that law, but there will no longer be a ban. Next. All right. So I'm getting toward the end, but I just wanted to clarify something about these protections that I've been talking about. A lot of people have heard of these protections being called a moratorium on evictions, and that is not the case, and it has never been the case. There have always been able to be at least some evictions, and even these protections are what they call affirmative defenses, which just means that it is a legal response to an eviction case or allegation that the tenant can bring to defend against the eviction. So eviction is a legal process, and tenants are entitled to due process, just like in any other court dispute. But it's very important that tenants understand how these rights work, how they can use them, and that they act fast to do that. One thing to know is that a notice from a landlord that says, "I want you to move out," is not an eviction. It's a warning that the landlord is required to give, but a lot of tenants don't know that, and they will move out as soon as the landlord tells them they want them out. What actually needs to happen is that the landlord needs to file in court. The court will then mail the tenant a notice, and the tenant needs to respond to the court. And that's where they can really use these defenses, their legal defenses, to be used in court. Of course, if it's possible to communicate between the tenant and the landlord to avoid it going to court, that's ideal, and everybody can sort of get resolved. And one way to do that is for the tenant to provide that hardship notice that I mentioned earlier. If they're not going to be able to pay their rent, notifying the landlord is very, very important. And so a lot of outreach is really necessary to ensure that tenants know that they have to do that to be protected. All right, so I was asked about eviction rates in this area. These are numbers of evictions that are filed in court. So I don't know the outcomes of these. And I narrowed it down to the 4 courthouses that serve these cities here, and as well as the LA neighborhoods and unincorporated areas. So that's the Long Beach, Compton, Norwalk, and Inglewood courthouses. They take eviction cases in these areas. And So I have from March 2020, beginning of the pandemic, through this past September. That's what's available so far. It's about 13,000 evictions filed, and you can see that they have risen dramatically, even now before the protections are over. Just
Also, it's about roughly 350 a month now. Like that's the trend line, I guess.
now, yeah, that looks about right. Well, it's a bit higher. I guess it depends on your courthouse, but yeah.
Okay, and then so this is all the courthouses. Oh, okay, I see.
This is
So
those 4 that serve the South Bay.
right, so the most is in Long Beach, and then we have Compton. So we're looking at roughly around 1,000, 1,200 maybe cases, or 1,000, about 1,000 a month right now. And once the moratorium ends, is there any guess as what it's going to be?
I'm not sure of the most recent guess on the actual numbers, but it's gonna go up for sure. It's gonna go up. Actually, if you don't mind, on the next slide is where I start to talk about how we're hoping to sort of address this issue. And one thing that we know that research has shown many times is that the vast majority of property owners going into an eviction have an attorney. The vast majority of tenants do not have an attorney. So the city and county of LA and a number of other cities have sponsored the Stay Housed LA initiative to provide legal assistance to tenants facing eviction. It's free or low cost depending on income. HRC is a partner in that, as well as many other legal aid organizations that you may know. So we strongly encourage people to reach out there and see if they can get an attorney, because the impact can be really large. It's actually striking how many evictions are found in favor of the tenant when they have an attorney compared to when they don't. Like that's the defining factor a lot of times. However, we also know that there are not enough attorneys for all of the evictions, even now, before we see this big spike. So a number of advocates and attorneys created the Tenant Power Toolkit, which is just to help the tenant to respond to the court in the very first step that they need to take, just to literally get their foot in the door, to be able to go to court and tell the judge their defenses. That is called an answer that they need to provide in response to the court summons. They only have 5 business days to complete that. You can probably imagine most people have no idea how to do that, or lots and lots of barriers to that. So the Tenant Power Toolkit is to try to help people do that on their own, even if they can't access an attorney. And then the county courthouses do also have self-help centers where they have staff to help with forms such as an answer, but they really help with all kinds of different things, and also something that can at times be difficult to access.
Ilana, while
Yeah.
we're on the slide, it's Lori. So if somebody calls Stay Housed LA and they're letting them know that they don't have enough lawyers available to give them the legal aid, are they going to refer people to the Tenant Power Kit?
Yes, yeah. And vice versa as well. So the Tenant Power Toolkit, again, just really helps with that first step. And then after that, the tenant is still going to have to go prepare for trial or for their court date and all these things. And so they definitely link to each other. And Stay Housed LA, in addition to providing legal services, also provides workshops and trainings. So for example, on trial prep. So people who are actually in the eviction process may or may not have an attorney by their side, but still need to go through the process.
So this at least gets them to beat that 5-day mandatory. So there's a comment that was put in the chat on this from Garrett Dunbar, and he's saying, given the potential increase in the number of evictions once these COVID-19 tenant protections in, what are our cities doing to inform tenants of their legal rights, similar to how law enforcement officers are required to read Miranda rights, et cetera? And this is a question I asked you, Ilana, and you said that we're looking to the county. So that question may be directed to Ivan on how do we message this out? How do we do this? And what is the Housing Rights Center doing for messaging?
Yeah. So there's a couple pieces there. So from the cities and the county directly, well, yeah, so the city of LA has their own protections, and they run those through the housing department. And then the county covers, as I mentioned, everywhere else. So every city except LA that's on this call is all covered underneath the county protections, and those are run through the Department of Consumer and Business Affairs. And they actually have really good resources on their website. They have some good explainers in multiple languages. They have webinars. They have help with small claims court, which I haven't even talked about, but which is another possibility for tenants who owe rent. But I haven't seen that much proactive outreach from the governments themselves. I mostly have seen, and my understanding is that it's really done through the community partners. So Stay Housed LA, for example, which is, funded by the county and by a number of cities.
So when somebody gets a 5-day notice, Alana, is the landlord required to provide the tenant with what the tools are they have to, is that a requirement for the landlord to give the tenant?
The landlord, if it's a 3-day notice to pay rent, which is what we're mostly seeing, they are supposed to give them a copy of the hardship form that the tenant can then sign and return to the landlord, and basically invoke their protection. And if they do use the hardship form that is provided by the city of LA or by the county, those do have some information on the ordinance themselves.
But that's not mandatory for the landlord to get. That's not mandatory is what you're saying.
Well, it was definitely mandatory, at least through a certain point, and I think that the county at least still does require it. There are some details that are not always clear, but for example, when the state of California had their rental assistance program for COVID, they made it clear that it was mandatory that a 3-day notice would need to include information on that program and how to apply. And they even created a new notice to file or to provide. The city and the county, I think, haven't been that detailed, but I'm pretty sure that they still do require the landlord to provide a copy of the hardship notice.
Okay, and I'm not trying to jam you up with these questions. When we get calls, when the city elected, the city staff get calls, we want to be able to tell tenants what their rights are.
Yeah, of course. No, I want that too.
Thank you.
I think Councilmember Sheik had a question on the other direction. Like, I think we also hear from property owners who are frustrated because they can't pay their mortgage because of these tenant protections. And so he was wondering, what are some protections for property owners?
Yeah, so the legal protections are they're consumer protections, but there is assistance for property owners with mortgages. The California COVID-19 mortgage assistance program is still open as far as I know. It is designed for smaller landlords. So I believe it was up to 4 units and living at in one of the units or one of the properties. We do spread the word about that as well. We were a partner in the rental assistance program, and it's part of the same initiative, so to speak. So we do spread the word on that too. I will say that when I have shared that with people in response to this question, a lot of people have responded that they don't necessarily qualify, or that it's not the mortgage itself that they're worried about, but just other consequences of not having the income. Thank you, Lori, for sharing that in the chat. other thing is that the protections for tenants as they're designed right now, right, the tenant is delaying their payment, but it's not canceled or forgiven. They still owe it, and the landlord can sue in small claims court if it's not paid back. So, you know, that is, it's not, I mean, I don't think anybody really thinks that these protections are perfect for tenants or landlords, but they're kind of they were designed initially as like a bare minimum protection to stop people from going out onto the streets, which would exacerbate COVID, as we know. And then they've been extended for 3 years, and it's created a difficult situation for everybody. But the short answer is yes, there are mortgage relief options for property owners. Oh, and also in addition to the one from the state, it's pretty common that banks are offering something similar, and the federal mortgages were also had what's it called, relaxed policies for a long time, where they weren't charging new interest or late fees. There was extended forbearance options, and federally backed mortgages are about 75% of those in the country. So,
Elena, this is Deborah Scott, City of Carson, and I have a quick question, if I may. So the rents that are owed, those back rents that have not been paid. I know some of the tenants were able to obtain the rental relief assistance, but for the ones that did not or still owe monies, how exactly are those funds going to be repaid if they don't have the money now? I mean, the reason why I'm asking, I get these calls all the time, and most of the tenants, they owe somewhere in the neighborhood of $25,000. So how are we going to, how is that going to be enforced by the landlord to get those funds back?
yeah, so the enforcement mechanism for the landlord, if the tenant did turn in their hardship form and get the protection, then the landlord can go to small claims court, and that's where they would get it back. And I should clarify too that although it is small claims court, for the specific purpose of the COVID-19 rent debt, the cap is waived. So however much money it is, it can be sought, but it will just be judged and be adjudicated in small claims court rather than elsewhere. And then how is it going to be paid? That's a great question. The rent relief program from the state of California ended earlier this year. And I personally have seen only a couple of sort of patchwork of cases of programs opening up again. You know, a council district in Los Angeles had one, cities here and there. So I think it's not looking likely, as far as I know, that the state is going to open another one, although maybe folks here know more than me about that. But we have heard from some cities who are trying to allocate their American Rescue Plan funds, who are considering short-term or long-term rental assistance programs. And I think that's probably the most, the earliest possible option, I would think.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I guess maybe it's worth adding as a reminder too, that a rent relief program, you know, it is assistance for tenants, but ultimately that money goes to the landlord or the property owner. So if you know, there are concerns about property owners not being able to pay their bills, the rent relief program is actually aid for them as well.
Well, I'm bringing this up because I do know people that did not receive the funds. The tenant actually received the funds. So I'm just trying to figure out, you know, how are the landlords going to be repaid if the funds did not go directly to the landlord? Because I know in some instances, those funds did go to the tenants, which I don't have any idea how that happened. And the landlord still did not get payment?
Yeah, I can might be able to shed some light on that because HRC, as I mentioned, was a partner in that program, meaning on the administrative side and marketing. But so the program was designed to pay the landlord directly. But if, in order to do that, the program needed paperwork and information from both the tenant household and the landlord. And paying to the tenant directly was a secondary option where if the landlord didn't elect to participate, the money would go to the tenant. Otherwise, it was supposed to go directly to the landlord.
Okay, thank you. I'm just asking these questions because I
Of
get
course,
calls
yeah, of
all the
course.
time.
No,
from,
Deborah, thanks for those questions.
Yeah,
Those are great questions. I wonder, I wish there was like some data that can kind of see what the dollar amount is in terms of amount of back rent being owed. I mean, and then we can get a better sense of if we need more of these rent relief programs. I don't know, Elena, if there's any type of data like that.
I am not sure if there has been a sort of a broad summary of how much rent is owed, or if there is, how updated it is. But I can tell you that it's one of the most common questions that we get from tenants and landlords actually too, is, is there rent relief? Where can I get rent relief? And we always have to say no at this point, unfortunately.
Okay. Yeah, that's something definitely we can all consider. And just want to throw out there, I think the UCLA Policy Lab states this fact that 2/3 of all homelessness begins with an eviction. So very concerned about that chart earlier and seeing the hockey stick spike in evictions and what that might do in terms of how our streets look heading into 2023 and 2024.
Oh yes, sorry. This is really perhaps more for reference, but just put together this guide of like what to do if you do receive an eviction notice, and it essentially just tries to direct people to the resources, and with the emphasis on sort of, do reach out for legal assistance, but if there's not any available, the tenant should still move forward because the court deadlines and the paperwork does not care if they have an attorney or not. So that's the gist of this. And again, this will be passed out. The rest is just about HRC. We have an email list where we share our upcoming events, where we share resources that we find out about, and of course our rental listing Project Place. And then the last one is just our contact information one more time.
Elena, where did you get the chart data from? Is there a place we can go to kind of keep this updated ourselves if we wanted to?
This I got from Stay Housed LA. I don't think that they're making it public month by month, but you can, I mean, it just comes directly from the courthouses. So anyone in theory could put together that information request. I think the Stay Housed Coalition does it. I'm not sure if they have to renew it every month or if they just have a standing one, or exactly how that works.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Hi, this is Councilman Sheikh. I have a couple quick questions. Can you guys hear me well?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. My question is, couple cities, they're issuing state of emergency on homelessness. What exactly does this mean?
I don't know if I'm the best person to speak to that. And also I'm not sure if each city might have something different. I guess I would say, I think it's fairly new, like in the last couple of years, that the issues of tenant protections and homelessness are being really consolidated in policy. And so I'm not sure if any of the new homelessness state of emergency declarations deal with tenant protections as a way to prevent homelessness or not. Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't have a great answer for you on those declarations.
Thank you.
I can help give kind of a quick little overview on that. I did share in the chat some information on the declaration of the state of emergency on homelessness in the city of Los Angeles. So really what happens after that state of emergency was declared is that our emergency response site was activated. And what that does is helps us obtain resources or address emergency situations a lot quicker. So it removes a lot of the process that you would usually make it very lengthy, removes a lot of those barriers for us to, I guess, address encampments or homelessness in our city a lot quicker.
Or do they get any funding from the state or federal? Because these require resources, some additional funding.
That I wouldn't have information on, but I'm happy to check in with our team and see if they can provide me with any information to share with this body.
Yeah, One has his hand up, and I know that we've been trying to get that answer to that as well, Councilman Sheik. One, do you have an answer to that?
Yeah, I have a brief response. What the city did, and kind of what Jocelyn was mentioning, is it allowed them to restructure their organizational processes, their administrative processes, to cut down unnecessary levels of approval that normally happen in the course of government business, going through the emergency management structure. So that's one thing that it did. Their city reorganized that bureaucratic process. The second thing that it did is allow them, and I guess it's kind of in conjunction, because the city of LA does have, a lot more resources. They did patch a couple different measures and stuff like that for housing. It allows them to bring their housing online much quicker. So they're coming with two huge advantages or resources by being able to do that. So I would kind of caution each city on whether, I wouldn't necessarily compare. It's not an apples to apples comparison, because again, they do have a lot more resources and they're bringing housing to that table to make sure that ensure that it comes online quicker.
May I
I think
ask
I
a
think the only other
question?
city that was interested in this is Long Beach, right? Do you know if they've actually done the declaration?
They haven't yet. I've participated in the city of LA's Inside Safe calls to see how they're organizing, seeing how they're doing their encampment resolution protocol. But the others, Long Beach hasn't yet, no.
Ronson, may I ask another question, please?
Yes, please, Deborah.
I'd like to know, is there anything, are we preparing for the evictions, which we know are going to come, and people are going to be in the streets? Is the mayor preparing for that? I know there's vouchers, and I heard earlier that there's a lot of vouchers, but there aren't any hotels for people to be placed in. So are we preparing for something like that? Because I'm sure that we are still going to have a lot of people that are going to be homeless due to these evictions, which were several. So I'd like to know, what are we preparing to do for that situation coming up?
And just to let everyone know, Deborah is the she helps with housing and planning with the city of Carson. So it sounds like she feels a lot of these questions. I don't know off the top of my head if there's anything doing other than the fact that it sounds like they're trying to funnel more resources to these legal endeavors, Stay Housed LA and the tenant power toolkit. But in terms of any additional safety nets, I'm not aware of any at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Anything else, Alana?
I guess I'll just say that, you know, I shared my contact information and in the slides also, how to refer people to us with questions, how to, if you wanted to host a public workshop or a training for staff, we're very happy to do that as part of our services. So, and we do provide trainings for property managers as well, property owners and managers, I should say. So please feel free to get in touch with me or with HRC if you'd like to follow up in any way. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, because what you brought up today brought up a lot of questions, a lot of things that we just don't know. And for those that want more information, Balana, she did put her contact information. And I think Lori did put up the presentation, and you can download that one too and go through some of the issues.
And I just want to, yeah, and then Jonathan actually brought a good point before we end on this. You know, one of the things that we're seeing, the people that are affected by these evictions are seniors on fixed income or just people on fixed income in general, you know, whether it's disability insurance or Social Security. And what's happening is the payments, you know, people are getting maybe on average $1,500 a month in Social Security, but their rent's like $1,900. And so what we're looking to do at the COG to prevent these types of evictions is to see if we can create a shallow subsidy program or even a street to subsidy program where we can bridge that gap. Because, you know, I tell people, you'll be surprised, a lot of our homeless, they actually do have income. They just don't have enough income. And so we're trying to do that. And then and we're definitely going to try to reach out more to the CES homeless prevention strategy to see how we can maybe better tap into those resources as well. Thanks, Jonathan.
Okay. All right, hearing no other questions, we're going to move on to Jackie. Is this you, legislative updates?
I think it's legislators. It's the people like Janet Turner, if she's got anything.
Okay, any of our legislators want to bring up some stuff?
Hello, good evening, everyone. Janet Turner with Congressman Ted Lieu. How is everybody doing? You always give such fascinating and really important information. I really appreciate it. Just one little update, and the fiscal 2023 omnibus bill, that included a lot of budget considerations. So the congressman had asked that there's a homeless prevention programs grant program, and he had asked that there be an increase in it from last year to this year. And so we're very happy that it went from 30.7 million to 36.4 million. Of course, he had a lot of other wins, but that's the one having to do with homelessness, and he'll be doing a lot more work on homelessness this year. That's about it for me.
Oh, and Janet, also, we got funding for $1 million for a mobile team for the beach cities, right? And then Torrance, I believe, got some funding as well, right? For their...
Yes, Torrance did, and yes, for the mobile health clinic. And I'm sorry, I just totally zoned out on that one because some of the community project funding wasn't homeless related, but indeed those two were. So yes, he's very, very pleased, and hopefully we'll do a little press something or other so we can present that check at some point.
Thank you for that. Thank you, and also the congressman.
We
I believe
appreciate
we
that.
also have somebody from Congressmember Barragon's office. Vanessa
Jump
Cruz.
right in.
Vanessa,
Mm,
did she disappear?
I don't know. I don't see on my screen.
She was just here. Okay, maybe she had to leave.
Okay, are there any other legislative representatives that need to bring us up to date on anything from our legislator? Just jump in. No?
Hi, sorry, if I can, sorry.
Go ahead, Jocelyn.
Yeah, so I was able to get an answer to the question about accessing state funding.
Good.
So the state of emergency on homelessness, it doesn't guarantee access to state funding. What it does is it allows to streamline the permitting and procurement to address homelessness and housing.
Good. Thanks for that research you just did. Hopefully that answers, I think it was Councilmember Shakes. That was yours? Yeah, okay. Hopefully that helps a little bit for there. Okay, no other legislative updates. Then we will move on to our Director, Jackie Backraft for the COG.
Hello, thanks. The COG is starting off the year very, very busy. We just received a grant at the end of Thanksgiving, right before Thanksgiving, from the California Public Utilities Commission to look at needs and market assessment for our fiber network. And we're going to be doing some design of where fiber might be needed in some of the disadvantaged communities. So that's going to be a big project of the Council of Governments in the next several months. We're also working on our local travel network, which I think we had a presentation last time on that. We've approved signage, and we're going to spend 2023 working on implementation and getting some of those signs in the ground and on the road. And we're still working with SCAG on projects having to do with the regional, with their REAP projects is what they call them, and they're to promote housing. We have a project on ADUs to look and see how ADUs are working in the South Bay, as well as a project on areas that might be capable of being redeveloped from commercial to housing. And then starting on January 12th, at noon, we have a workshop for cities, and it's not open to the general public, but if you're interested, let me know. And it's on housing issues, and the first one is going to be on housing markets. And what we're trying to do is break down all of the issues and perspectives having to do with housing and our housing shortage, and what does it look like from the developer's viewpoint? What does it look like from the homeowner's viewpoint? That kind of thing. So those are going to be noon to 1 virtual on, we don't have definite dates, but the first one is January 12th for sure. So that's something we're doing. And then another thing that's going to be happening this year, which is really important, is the EIR is coming out for the Green Line, or I guess it's called the C Line extension. And that's going to come out probably at the end of January, where there's going to be a lot of public testimony on which alignments to choose. The county is not taking a position on that at this point, but we are planning a bus tour, and it's open to elected officials. It's going to probably be March 2nd. Elected officials will have first dibs on seats on the bus. And if there's more room and you're interested, let me know. And I can, we'll have a waiting list for people if there's room. Then the last thing, which is, of course, our big event of the year, our General Assembly is going to be March 23rd. It's going to be from 9 to 3 at the Carson Community Center. We are taking sponsorships now. Sponsors that are over $2,500 get a table that they can display their information on. And so we have an exhibit room, and cities exhibit and other agencies. And then the General Assembly is free. This year, the title of the General Assembly is, I walked right into that. I don't have it right in front of me. The South Bay Leading the Way on Resilience and Adaptability. And we actually have 2 confirmed speakers and several on the way, but we're very excited about our confirmed speakers. The first is Lorenz Christoph, who used to be on the, and I should explain the subject matter of this is conflicting state goals, how we're growing when we have trouble on the grid, when we have a drought, how do we take the important things in the state and figure out how they're going to work. And what we want our speakers to do is present the issues and then have local people talk about the projects we're doing in the South Bay to address some of those issues. And then at the end of the day, we're hoping to have a panel of youth which could be 20 to 30, I guess, to talk about the fact that it's their world we're all planning for and what do they see as the critical issues. So our first speaker is Lorenz Christoph. He used to be on the Independent System Operator Board, and he's an expert in energy markets. And our second speaker, very excited about, is Gene Rodriguez. Gene used to work, he was the vice president of Edison, and he's always been an incredible friend of the COG. And right before the New Year's, he was confirmed by the US Senate to be Assistant Secretary of Energy in the Office of Electricity, working on problems and issues of the grid. So he will come talk to us, and we're very excited about that. More speakers will be announced as we know more, but please save March 23rd, and we hope that you'll come. I don't think there's anything else. Did I miss anything, Ronson or Lori? Okay, thank you.
Hi, can I jump in for a second, Janet Turner again?
Go ahead, Janet.
I wanted to make sure I gave you the exact information. So the omnibus bill approved $1 million for Torrance temporary housing program, and it approved $1 million for the city of Hermosa Beach for a mobile mental health crisis response team. You'll be hearing that other cities in South Bay got money for other kinds of things, but those are the homeless related ones. Thanks so much for letting me clarify.
No, thank the congressman also for the hard work he's doing for South Bay. Appreciate that. Okay, man, we got a little early here. So we're at, anybody has any announcements that they want to make at this time? Just go ahead and, raise your hand or throw it out there.
I'd like to mention that we have our newly elected CD 15 council member here in attendance, Tim McCosker. And I'm not sure, Jackie, if we have some other newly elected.
Yes, we have. Hello, Councilman McCosker. Thank you for coming. We also have Paul Seo, councilman from Rancho Palos Verdes, who's a brand new council member.
Welcome.
Thank you. And I don't think we had anybody else that were new. We have other council members.
Yeah, we hope to see all of our newly electeds join us on most of our websites for the COG and all the meetings that we have.
I should mention, Rodney, that on January 26th, which is our next board meeting,
right?
One of the main part of the meeting is sort of a welcome to all new council members and a review for older council members about the programs of the COG, sort of an overview. So we hope that everybody will come to the, older new, that you'll come to our meeting on January 26th.
Yes. And, just to let everybody know, our chairman of the COG, John Cruikshank, is online right now. John, you want to say something?
Thanks, Rodney. This is actually the first time I've been involved with this homeless committee. And I would say this, Rodney, and the whole group, that was very impressive, and have 50 plus people that are of all high prominence on this call is great, because as Ronson mentioned earlier, we've got a real crisis out there. And so I knew my involvement also is important. All 16 cities of the South Bay COG want to participate, want to help. We want to figure out our place, in helping. And even though our city might not have a lot of homeless people, that doesn't mean that we don't care as much and want to help out as much. So I just want to say thank you to everyone that's involved in this call and showing the importance to this major issue that we're bringing light. So just kudos to the whole group and keep up the great work. Thanks, Rodney.
Oh, no, thank you, John. We appreciate you.
And I think with that, we've recognized every elected official except for Bill Elpoff from the Mayor Pro Tem of Lomita.
Thank you, Jackie. Appreciate it.
Hi, Bill. Okay, so with that all being said, I just have one comment. I worked Skid Row for 12 years, and weather like this is just horrendous to homelessness. And we used to put out emergency shelters with cots and stuff so people could get out of the elements. But, in each city, with each of us in our own elements, if we discover that there are people out there, we need to try to at least get some type of assistance for them, because this storm's not going to give up, and it's just going to get worse. So if we as electeds in our communities can help these people, please try to do the best you can to get them off the street and in some type of shelter, because it's just going to get worse. So with that, I thank you all for being here. Aronson, Laurie, I appreciate all you do for Homeless Task Force. And as John said, this is probably one of the biggest meetings that we have. There's 57 to 60 people that join this meeting. And that just goes to show you how important this topic is and how important the information that we get out is to all of our communities. So one last chance. Any other announcements? Any other issues that you want to jump up and bring up? Go ahead, Amanda. No, I thought I had one. Okay, that being said, thank you again. Happy New Year. Be safe out there. We'll see you again, and we'll be adjourned until 1 March will be our next meeting. Okay?
Happy New Year. Thank you.
Thank you,
Happy New
Rodney.
Year. Be safe.